He bet his entire ranch no woman could tame the devil horse, she whispered once, and the beast bowed. The horse they called Devil. The town of Red Hollow, Wyoming Territory, 1883, had a way of swallowing women whole. Dust settled on everything, on windowpanes, on church pews, on reputations. And once it settled, it never quite lifted. When Clara Whitmore stepped down from the stagecoach that September afternoon, 30 pairs of eyes turned toward her. She wasn't dressed for Red Hollow. Her traveling dress was simple but clean. Her gloves were mended carefully. Her straw bonnet was faded from use but not neglect. She carried one suitcase and something far heavier, a past no one here would forgive if they knew it. "She's the mail-order bride," someone muttered near the saloon doors. "Poor fool," another voice answered. Across the street stood Caleb Mercer, owner of the largest cattle spread in 3 counties. Widower, rich, feared, respected, alone. He didn't move when she stepped down. Didn't tip his hat. Didn't smile. He just watched. Caleb Mercer had not wanted a wife. He wanted help. The ranch was failing. Not from lack of cattle, not from drought, not from rustlers. From a horse. A massive black stallion that had broken 32 men. Some walked away with scars. 3 didn't walk away at all. The horse had arrived wild from the Dakotas, untamed, unbroken, rage in muscle form. Caleb had purchased it at auction out of pride. Stubborn pride. And pride had cost him everything since. The animal threw every rider. Bit through reins. Kicked through stable walls. Killed his best ranch hand last spring. Now the town called it Devil. Caleb called it a mistake. But he would never say that out loud. When Clara crossed the street toward him, the dust swirling at her boots, Caleb finally moved. "You're Clara Whitmore?" he asked, voice low and flat. "Yes, sir. You understand this isn't a city parlor marriage." "I didn't come for comfort," she said softly. He studied her face. Not frightened, not bold, just steady. He gestured toward the wagon. "Get in. No welcome, no ceremony, no kindness, just terms." The Mercer Ranch stretched wide and lonely against the prairie. Fences leaned where storms had tested them. The barn stood tall but weathered. The wind never stopped whispering across the land. Clara stepped down at the ranch house. It was larger than she expected. And emptier. Inside, the rooms echoed. There were no curtains, no flowers, no warmth. "You'll have the upstairs room," Caleb said. "Housekeeper left last year." "Why?" He didn't answer. From outside came a thunderous crash. Wood splintered. A scream of rage that did not belong to a man. Clara froze. Caleb didn't. "That's Devil," he said. Another slam. The barn doors rattled. "He's been worse since August." Clara moved toward the window. Through the glass she saw him. Black as midnight, muscles coiled like storm clouds. Mane wild, eyes blazing with something beyond anger. Pain. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Caleb's expression hardened. "He's a killer. He's hurting." Caleb looked at her sharply. "You don't know anything about him." She turned from the window. "You don't know anything about me either." Silence filled the room. Wind pressed against the house. And for the first time in months, something unsettled Caleb Mercer. Not the horse. The woman. That evening at supper, Clara cooked from what she found: dried beans, salt pork, flour. Simple food. She moved with quiet confidence in the kitchen, as if she had done hard things before. Caleb watched from the table. "You grew up on a farm?" he asked. "No." "Then how do you know how to do this?" "I learned quickly," he grunted. "You won't need to worry about the ranch. I didn't bring you here for that." "Then why did you bring me?" He stared at his plate. "A man can't keep a house and run cattle at the same time." "That's all." "Yes." She nodded. But she didn't believe him. And neither did he. The first time Clara approached the barn, every ranch hand stopped working. "She shouldn't go in there," one muttered. "Boss won't allow it. She don't know what that thing does." Caleb saw her walking toward the stable and stormed after her. "Stay away from that stallion," he ordered. She didn't stop. "I'm not riding him." "That don't matter." She paused at the gate. The horse was pacing inside the reinforced stall. Sweat glistened across his dark coat. His breathing was uneven. He wasn't raging. He was trapped. Clara removed her gloves slowly, every movement deliberate. Caleb grabbed her arm. You don't understand. 32 cowboys tried. 32. Did any of them listen? She asked quietly. The question caught him off guard. Listen to him. The horse slammed against the wood. Caleb flinched. Clara didn't. She stepped closer. Not into the stall, just close enough to be seen. Hello, she said softly. The horse reared. Workers stepped back. Caleb cursed under his breath. But Clara didn't retreat. She stood still, hands open, eyes steady. I won't hurt you, she whispered. The stallion's breathing shifted, still hard, but not frantic. Clara did not reach out. She only stood. Minutes passed. Wind hissed through cracks in the barn. The ranch hands stared in disbelief. The horse lowered his head an inch. Just an inch. Caleb saw it. No one else did, but he saw it, and something inside his chest tightened. Clara stepped back slowly. That's enough for today, she said. You didn't do anything, Caleb snapped. She looked at him. I didn't force anything. Then she walked back toward the house, leaving 30 stunned men behind. And one shaken rancher. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He heard the wind. He heard the barn creak. He did not hear the horse raging. For the first time in months. Silence. He rose before dawn and went to the stable. Devil stood quietly, watching the horizon, not pacing, not striking the walls, just waiting. Caleb ran a hand down the stall door. What did she do to you? The horse flicked an ear, as if considering. Behind him came Clara's voice. May I try again? He turned. You're not afraid? Yes. The honesty startled him, but fear isn't the same as danger. She stepped beside him, and this time, she reached toward the gate. Caleb caught his breath. The latch clicked open. The stall door swung slightly. The black stallion stood still. Not charging, not striking, just watching her. Clara extended her hand. Not high, not fast, just enough. Easy, she breathed. The horse stepped forward. Once. Caleb's heart pounded. 2 steps. The ranch hands had gathered behind the barn doors. No one dared breathe. The stallion's nose hovered inches from her palm. Clara did not flinch. And then, he touched her. Soft, like a question. Caleb felt something he hadn't felt since his wife died. Hope. But hope in Red Hollow never came without a price. From the ridge above the ranch, a rider watched. Hat pulled low, eyes calculating. The black stallion wasn't just any horse. He had been stolen, and the men who lost him were coming to take him back. And they did not care who got hurt in the process. The men who came for the horse. The prairie does not forget. It remembers hoofprints. It remembers gunfire. It remembers blood. And 3 days after Clara first touched the black stallion, the past came riding back across the horizon. The change in Devil. By the 4th morning, the ranch hands had stopped calling the horse Devil. Not out loud, anyway. Because something had shifted. Clara did not rush him. She did not bring ropes or bridles. She brought apples and patience. She stood with him every sunrise. Spoke softly. Never demanded. Never forced. On the 5th day, he allowed her inside the stall. Caleb nearly tore the barn door off its hinges when he saw her step through. Get out, he barked, but she didn't. The stallion turned toward her. Massive, dangerous, powerful enough to shatter bone with one kick. Clara raised her hand slowly, and rested it against his neck. The entire barn went still. The horse trembled, not with rage, with memory. He's been beaten, she said quietly. Caleb's jaw tightened. He was wild. No, she replied gently. He was betrayed. Caleb didn't know why the word struck him so deeply. Maybe because betrayal was something he understood too well. A rancher's ghost. That evening, Clara found Caleb alone on the porch, staring into the fading light. You loved her, she said softly. He didn't ask how she knew. Yes, she died here. He nodded. Fever. Took her in 3 days. Clara sat beside him but left space between them. After that, you stopped listening to anything that could break you again. His eyes flicked toward her. You think you know me? No, she answered honestly. But I know grief. The wind carried silence between them. Finally, Caleb spoke. What happened to you, Clara Whitmore? She folded her hands in her lap. I married once before. He went still. He drank, gambled, lost everything that wasn't nailed down. And you, I was nailed down. The words landed like a gunshot. Caleb looked at her fully then. You ran. Yes. They'll come looking. They already did. There was something in her voice that made him uneasy. Not fear. Finality. Riders on the ridge. At dawn the next day, one of the ranch hands came running. Mr. Mercer. Riders comin' from the north. Caleb grabbed his rifle. 3 men. Hard faces. Dust-covered. Armed. They didn't slow when they reached the gate. The lead rider called out, "We're here for our horse." Caleb stepped forward. Your horse? The black stallion. Stolen out of Dakota Territory last spring. Caleb's stomach tightened. I bought him at auction. From a thief. The second rider spat in the dirt. That animal belongs to Silas Crow. Clara, standing behind the porch rail, felt the name like ice down her spine. Silas Crow. She knew that name. Caleb's voice hardened. You've got proof. The lead rider smirked. We've got guns. The ranch hands shifted uneasily. Caleb did not step back. You step foot on my land without law, you'll regret it. The rider leaned in his saddle. You don't understand what that horse is worth. Clara whispered under her breath, he's not talking about money. Caleb heard her, and something clicked. The stallion wasn't just valuable. He was connected to something darker. The lead rider tipped his hat mockingly. You've got 2 days. Then we come through that gate whether you open it or not. They turned and rode off. Dust swallowed them, but the threat remained. The truth about Devil. That night, Clara went to the barn alone. The stallion lifted his head when she entered. Silas Crow, she whispered. The horse's ears flicked sharply. She closed her eyes. It was him, wasn't it? The stallion shifted, restless. Caleb's voice sounded from the doorway. You know that name. She turned slowly. Yes. How? She hesitated, then told him. Silas Crow wasn't just a horse trader. He ran underground fighting pits. Forced stallions to battle, bet fortunes on blood, and when the animals were no longer useful, they disappeared. He trains them through starvation, Clara said quietly. Through pain. Caleb felt rage build in his chest. You saw this. My husband owed him money. Silence. And Crow took the horse instead, Caleb guessed. No. Her voice broke slightly. He took me. The barn seemed to shrink around them. Caleb's hands curled into fists. He kept me until my husband paid. And did he? Yes. She looked up at him. But something in that place broke. She stepped toward the stallion. I used to sneak apples to the horses when no one was watching. The stallion pressed his head gently against her shoulder. Caleb swallowed hard. He remembers you. Yes. And suddenly it all made sense. Why the horse had stilled at her voice. Why rage turned to recognition. Why pain answered pain. The choice. They'll come back, Caleb said. Yes. If that horse belongs to Crow, he won't stop. Clara faced him. Then don't give him the horse. That could cost lives. She stepped closer. He won't stop if you give him the horse either. The truth of it settled heavy between them. Caleb looked at the stallion. At the woman beside him. At the ranch he had built with his own hands. I won't let that man step foot on my land. Clara's eyes softened. You're not protecting the horse. No. He met her gaze. I'm protecting you. For the first time since she arrived in Red Hollow, Clara Whitmore felt safe. The first ride. The next morning, Clara did something no one expected. She saddled the stallion. Gasps rippled through the ranch hands. Caleb strode toward her. This isn't the time. Yes, it is, she said. If Crow comes, he'll expect the horse to be wild. She tightened the cinch. We show him he failed. Caleb stared at her. You could die. I already survived worse. The stallion stood still as she mounted. Not calm, but trusting. Clara settled into the saddle. The horse shifted beneath her. Then, she whispered something only he could hear. And the black stallion stepped forward. Smooth, controlled, powerful. The ranch hands stood frozen in disbelief. Caleb's chest tightened as she guided the massive animal across the yard. No bucking, no screaming rage, just strength. Together, the horse that broke 32 men, carried one woman gently, and in that moment, Caleb Mercer knew. If Silas Crow came for that stallion, He would find something far more dangerous than a wild horse. He would find a woman who no longer ran. But far beyond the northern ridge, Silas Crow himself had begun the ride to Red Hollow, and he never lost what he believed was his. When the past rode through the gate, the storm came before the man. Clouds rolled over the Wyoming sky like dark cavalry. Wind bent the prairie grass low. The air felt heavy, the kind that presses against your ribs and warns you something is about to break. Clara felt it before she saw him. Devil felt it too. The stallion paced near the fence line that morning, not wild, not frantic, alert. Waiting. Caleb stood beside the corral, rifle in hand. "He's close," Clara said quietly. Caleb didn't ask how she knew. The arrival of Silas Crow. By noon, dust rose on the northern ridge. 5 riders this time. At their center rode a man who did not need to shout to be feared. Silas Crow. Tall, lean, dressed in black that looked too clean for the frontier. His hat shadowed eyes that missed nothing. He rode through the Mercer gate without slowing. Caleb stepped forward. "You're trespassing." Crow's mouth curved slightly. "I'm reclaiming property." His gaze shifted past Caleb and landed on Clara. The faint smile disappeared. "Well now," he said softly, "if it isn't my vanished little songbird." Every ranch hand stiffened. Caleb moved half a step in front of her. "You'll address her with respect." Crow chuckled. "You must be Mercer." "That's right." Crow dismounted slowly, boots hitting dirt with calm confidence. "You bought my horse." "I bought him legal. From a thief." "Then take it up with the thief." Crow's eyes sharpened. "No, I'll take it up with you." A reckoning. In the yard, Devil reared behind the fence at the sound of Crow's voice. Not in rage, in terror. Clara felt it like a knife to her chest. Crow turned toward the corral. "There he is." He stepped forward. Devil slammed into the fence so hard the wood cracked. Crow only smiled. "Still got fire." Clara moved forward despite Caleb's grip on her wrist. "Don't," he warned. But she did. She stepped into view. "Leave him," she said steadily. Crow tilted his head. "You think you have the right to command me? I think you've taken enough." The ranch yard went silent. Crow studied her carefully. "You ran." "Yes. You belonged to me until the debt was paid. I was never yours." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "You forget your place." Caleb's voice cut in cold and firm. "She has no place under you." Crow's eyes slid to Caleb. "You want to protect her. That's noble." He stepped closer. "But you can't protect what you don't own." The words were deliberate, cruel. Caleb's jaw tightened. "I don't own her." Crow smirked. "That's your first mistake." The challenge. Crow turned toward the horse again. "I'll make this simple. The stallion comes with me, or I burn this ranch to the ground." The ranch hands shifted uneasily. Caleb lifted his rifle slightly. "You won't make it 10 feet. Crow laughed softly. "You think I came without preparation?" From the ridge behind them, more riders appeared. Hidden until now, guns glinted in the sun. Clara's breath caught. Crow leaned closer to Caleb. "You can't win a war you don't understand." Devil's breathing grew frantic. Clara made a decision in that instant. "If I ride him," she said. Both men looked at her. "If I ride him to the ridge and back, and he comes willingly, you leave." Crow studied her. "And if he doesn't?" She swallowed. "Then he goes with you." Caleb turned sharply. "Absolutely not." She met his eyes. "He's not just fighting for the horse." Crow's lips curved again. "He's right," Clara continued, steady despite the fear twisting in her stomach. "He's fighting to prove he still owns what he breaks." Crow's smile vanished. For a moment, his mask slipped. Then he nodded slowly. "One ride." Caleb grabbed her arm. "He'll shoot you before you make it halfway." "No," Crow said calmly. "I want to see this." He gestured toward the corral. "Open it." The ride that changed everything. The gate swung open. Devil backed toward the far fence, trembling. Clara stepped inside alone. The yard held its breath. She approached slowly. "Easy," she whispered. The stallion's ears flicked. Crow folded his arms, watching with calculating eyes. Clara reached him, pressed her forehead gently against his neck. "You don't belong to him," she breathed. "You never did." Devil's muscles eased under her touch. She mounted carefully. No saddle this time, only trust. The moment she settled onto his back, the world seemed to pause. Crow's men shifted, waiting for the explosion. Instead, Devil stepped forward, smooth, controlled. Clara guided him toward the open field. Past the gate, past the rifles, past Silas Crow. Crow's jaw tightened. She urged the stallion into a gallop. Wind tore at her dress. Dust rose in a golden storm behind them. But Devil did not fight. He ran free. Not away, not wild, free. Halfway to the ridge, Clara felt him hesitate. Crow whistled sharply from the yard. A command, old training, cruel conditioning. Devil faltered. Clara leaned low over his neck. "You don't answer to that anymore," she whispered fiercely. "You answer to yourself." For one terrifying second, the horse reared high. Crow's men laughed. But then, Devil came down steady, and surged forward harder than before. Past the ridge, beyond Crow's line of sight, Caleb's hands trembled on his rifle. Minutes felt like hours. Then, through the dust, she returned. Not dragged, not thrown, riding tall. The stallion slowed as they entered the yard, and stopped directly in front of Crow. Head high, unbroken, Clara looked down at the man who once owned her fear. He chooses. Crow's face darkened. The ranch hands stood straighter. Caleb stepped beside the horse. "You've lost." For a long moment, the only sound was wind across open land. Crow's pride warred with his rage. Finally, he gave a sharp nod to his men. "We'll go." He mounted slowly, but before turning away, he looked at Clara. "You think this ends here?" She held his gaze. It already did. Crow's eyes flicked to Caleb. "You've invited war, Mercer." Caleb answered without hesitation. "Then come prepared." Crow rode out. Dust swallowed him, but everyone knew. Men like Silas Crow did not forget humiliation. After the storm, that night, the ranch was quiet. The sky cleared. Stars burned bright. Clara stood by the fence, Devil grazing peacefully beside her. Caleb approached slowly. "You were shaking," he said softly. "Yes, but you didn't run." "No." He stepped closer. "You're not alone here anymore." She looked up at him. Something unspoken passed between them. Not possession, not obligation, choice. Devil nudged Caleb's shoulder gently. The rancher almost laughed. "He likes you too," Clara said. Caleb shook his head in disbelief. 32 men, and one woman who listened. He looked at her long and steady. "You didn't just tame the horse." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "No, you freed him." The wind softened around them. But far away, in the dark beyond Red Hollow, Silas Crow was not riding home. He was gathering men, and planning revenge, because humiliation burns hotter than gunpowder. And he would not let this end with a single ride. The night the ranch burned, Red Hollow slept under a thin moon. Too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes dogs restless and horses uneasy. Clara woke before the flames. Devil did. The stallion's scream tore through the night, not rage. Warning. Clara bolted upright in bed. Then she smelled it. Smoke. Fire in the wind. By the time Caleb burst through her door, the barn was already burning. Orange light swallowed the dark. Ranch hands ran shouting across the yard. Buckets. Water. Chaos. "They've cut the south fence." Someone yelled. Gunshots cracked from the ridge. Silas Crow had not come to negotiate. He had come to destroy. Caleb grabbed his rifle and fired toward the shadows. "Get the horses out," he shouted. Clara ran toward the barn. "Clara," Caleb roared, but she didn't stop. Inside, smoke choked the air. Flames licked up dry timber. Horses screamed and kicked against their stalls. Devil was still inside, pinned. A fallen beam blocked the stall door. Clara wrapped her sleeve over her mouth and forced her way forward. "Easy," she coughed. Devil thrashed against the wood. She grabbed a pitchfork and shoved at the beam. It wouldn't budge. Outside, another gunshot. Glass shattered. Caleb saw her through the smoke. And without thinking, he ran in after her. Between flame and fury, the heat was unbearable. Caleb heaved at the beam while Clara soothed the stallion. "Steady," she whispered hoarsely. The wood shifted, collapsed. Devil surged forward, nearly trampling them in panic. Clara stepped directly in front of him. "Look at me." The horse froze. Just long enough. Caleb swung the gate open. Together they pushed Devil toward the exit. A flaming board crashed behind them. They dove out seconds before the roof partially caved in. Outside, gunfire continued. Crow's men were driving cattle into chaos. Caleb shoved Clara behind a wagon. "You stay down. I can help." "You already did." Another shot cracked past them. Caleb fired back. One rider fell from his horse. The others retreated toward the ridge, not defeated, just finished with their message. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving smoke, flames, and half a barn in ruins. What was lost? By dawn, the fire was out. 3 horses dead, 2 injured, south fence destroyed, hay stores burned to ash. The ranch hands gathered in silence. Caleb stood rigid, soot covering his face. Clara approached slowly. "You saved him," Caleb said quietly. "We saved each other." His jaw tightened. He wanted this. Yes, he wants me to choose fear. She looked toward the blackened barn. "Then don't." Caleb's voice dropped. "He'll keep coming." Clara met his gaze steadily. "Then we stop waiting." A new decision. That afternoon, Caleb rode into Red Hollow. For the first time in years, he entered the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Willis looked up in surprise. "Mercer, thought you handled things your own way." "Not anymore." Caleb set a charred piece of wood on the desk. "He burned my barn." Willis sighed. "Silas Crow's got reach, money, men, and he's got charges in Dakota Territory." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "What are you proposing?" "A warrant. That'll mean court, witnesses." Caleb nodded once. "You'll need testimony." "I have it." Back at the ranch, Clara packed a small satchel. She knew what testimony meant. Facing Crow publicly, speaking what he'd done, naming what most men feared. When Caleb returned, she was waiting on the porch. "You're sure?" he asked. "No," she answered honestly. "But I'm done hiding." The threat returns. 2 nights later, a letter arrived. No signature. Just 3 words burned into the paper. "Court won't save you." Clara held it steady despite the tremor in her hands. Caleb saw the fear flicker across her face. He stepped closer. "He's bluffing." "No," she said quietly. "He's desperate." Devil paced near the fence. Restless again, Caleb exhaled slowly. "I won't let him take this from you." Clara looked up at him. "You can't fight this alone." "I'm not." The words hung between them. Not obligation, not arrangement, something stronger. The proposal no one expected. 3 days before the hearing in Cheyenne, Caleb stood in the yard beside Devil. Clara joined him. "If something happens," he began. "It won't." "If it does." She waited. He cleared his throat, suddenly less certain than he'd ever been in a gunfight. "When you first came here, I needed a housekeeper." She smiled faintly. "I remember." "I don't anymore." Her breath caught. "I need a partner." The prairie wind softened. "Not because you owe me," he added quickly. "Not because you need protection." He met her eyes fully. "Because I choose you." Silence stretched long and fragile. Clara stepped closer. "You don't own me." "No. And I don't belong to you." "No. But I'll stand beside you." That was enough. Devil lowered his head gently between them, as if sealing something unspoken. The gathering storm. Far from the ranch, Silas Crow read the notice of court summons. His expression darkened. "Witness testimony," one of his men muttered. Crow crushed the paper in his fist. She should have stayed gone. He mounted his horse slowly. "Prepare the men. You're going to Cheyenne." Crow's eyes hardened. "No." He turned his horse toward Red Hollow instead. "If she wants to speak in court." He adjusted his gloves calmly. "She'll have to make it there first." Back at the Mercer Ranch, the wagons were being prepared for the journey east. Clara folded her dress carefully. Caleb checked his rifle twice. Devil stood calm, powerful, watchful. They believed the worst had already happened. They were wrong. Because Silas Crow was not planning another warning. He was planning an ending. The road to Cheyenne. The prairie stretched wide and merciless beneath a pale morning sky. Clara sat beside Caleb, on the wagon bench, rein steady in his hands. 2 ranch hands rode ahead. One followed behind. Devil trotted alongside them, not tied, not forced. Free. Cheyenne was 3 days east. 3 days of open land. 3 days of exposure. 3 days for Silas Crow to decide whether pride was worth blood. Clara felt it in her bones. He would not let her reach that courtroom easily. The first sign. They made camp the first night near a dry creek bed. The wind had died, too still. Devil refused to settle. He circled the camp twice, ears pinned. Caleb noticed. He senses something. Clara nodded. He always did. Just after midnight, a pebble skittered down the ridge. One of the ranch hands reached for his rifle. Then, gunfire. The first shot shattered the lantern. Darkness swallowed the camp. Down. Caleb shouted. More shots cracked from above. Bullets tore through canvas. The horses panicked. Clara hit the ground behind the wagon wheel. Devil reared but did not flee. He turned toward the ridge. Toward the threat, Caleb fired into the shadows. A man cried out. Another shot answered. The ambush lasted less than 5 minutes. Then silence returned. Footsteps retreated into the night. When dawn broke, they found blood on the rocks. But no bodies. A warning. Not the end. The realization. He's testing us, Clara said quietly as they repacked. Caleb's jaw tightened. He won't stop testing. He's waiting for fear. Caleb looked at her. Are you afraid? Yes. She didn't pretend otherwise. But I'm more afraid of staying silent. That answer settled something inside him. The second night, the second camp was closer to Cheyenne. Closer to safety. But Crow didn't attack that night. Instead, he sent a rider alone. White cloth tied to his rifle. The man stopped just outside camp. Message from Mr. Crow. Caleb kept his gun trained. Speak it. The rider looked at Clara. He says if you turn back now, no more blood gets spilled. Clara rose slowly. And if we don't? The rider hesitated. He says you won't make it to sunrise. Caleb stepped forward. Tell him something for me. The rider waited. He had his chance. The rider swallowed and turned back toward the dark. Clara watched him go. He won't bluff again, she said softly. No, Caleb agreed. He won't. The trap at dawn. They broke camp before first light. Mist clung low to the earth. The road narrowed through a rocky pass. Too narrow. Caleb's instincts flared. Stop. Too late. A rope snapped tight across the trail. The lead rider was thrown hard from his horse. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the pass. Crow had chosen his ground carefully. Rocks. High cover. No easy escape. Caleb pulled Clara down behind the wagon as bullets tore through wood. Devil screamed. Not in fear. In fury. 2 ranch hands returned fire. One went down. Clara felt the world tilt. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was execution. Through the smoke and chaos, a familiar figure rode down from the ridge. Silas Crow. Calm. Untouched. You should have listened. He called over the gunfire. Caleb fired toward him but missed. Crow dismounted and began walking forward as his men kept shooting. He wanted this personal. Clara's heart pounded. She looked at Devil. The stallion stood trembling but ready. An idea, wild, dangerous, sparked in her mind. Caleb, she said urgently. What? Trust me. Before he could stop her, she broke from cover and ran toward Devil. Clara, Caleb roared. Crow's eyes widened. Clara mounted bareback in one swift motion. Bullets whistled past her. She leaned low over Devil's neck. Now, she whispered fiercely. The stallion exploded forward, not away, toward the ridge, toward the shooters. Crow's men faltered at the sight of the massive black horse charging them. Devil thundered uphill like a storm unleashed. Clara guided him between rocks, closing distance fast. Gunmen scrambled. One fired too late. Devil struck him hard, knocking him from his perch. Another fled. The sudden chaos broke Crow's advantage. Below, Caleb and the remaining ranch hands surged forward, pushing through the pass while Crow's formation collapsed. Within minutes, the ambush unraveled. Crow stood alone in the trail, dust swirling around him. His men scattered, bleeding, retreating. Devil descended slowly, breath heavy but controlled. Clara slid down from his back. Crow stared at her. You'd throw your life away for a courtroom? He asked coldly. No, she answered steadily. I'd risk it for my freedom. Crow's eyes flicked to Caleb approaching behind her. You think a judge will cage me? No, Caleb said firmly. But the law will chase you. Crow's lip curled. Men like me don't get chased. He backed toward his horse. But you've made this expensive. His gaze burned into Clara. This isn't finished. Then he mounted and rode off, alone. Not victorious, Not defeated, but wounded in pride, and men like Silas Crow were most dangerous when wounded. The last mile. They buried one ranch hand before reaching Cheyenne. The cost weighed heavy. Clara stood outside the courthouse, hands steady despite the storm inside her chest. Caleb touched her shoulder. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. She stepped inside. Devil waited tied outside, head high, watching, guarding, as Clara Whitmore walked into the courtroom to speak her truth. And this time, she would not whisper. But inside that courtroom, Silas Crow had already placed his final move. Because he had friends in high places. And truth alone was not always enough to win. The day the silence broke. The courthouse in Cheyenne was smaller than Clara expected. Wood floors, tall windows, dust suspended in beams of light, 12 men in stiff collars, a judge with tired eyes, and at the defense table, Silas Crow, clean, composed, almost bored, as if the fire, the ambush, the threats were nothing more than misunderstandings. Caleb sat behind Clara, close enough that she could feel his presence. Not controlling, not shielding, standing, with her. Outside, Devil stamped once against the hitching post, restless. Crow's confidence. Crow's attorney spoke first. Mr. Crow is a respected livestock investor with holdings across multiple territories. These accusations are emotional retaliation from a disgruntled woman who abandoned lawful arrangements. Lawful arrangements. Clara's stomach twisted. Caleb's hands clenched, but he did not interrupt. The judge turned toward Clara. You may testify. The room felt smaller, heavier. Clara stood, walked forward, and faced the man who once believed he owned her fear. The voice he couldn't break. State your name. Clara Whitmore. Your accusation. She inhaled slowly. Kidnapping, coercion, illegal animal fighting, assault. A murmur rippled through the room. Crow didn't move. She continued. My husband owed him money. Mr. Crow detained me against my will until payment was made. The defense attorney stood quickly. Objection. No documentation. No witness. Clara didn't falter. There were witnesses. Crow's jaw shifted slightly. Men who work for him. Men loyal to him, the attorney countered. Yes, Clara said calmly. But not all of them stayed loyal. The courtroom door opened. Heads turned. A man stepped inside. Bandaged arm. Limp in his step. One of Crow's former riders. The same man injured during the pass ambush. Gasps filled the room. The man removed his hat. I'll testify, he said quietly. Crow's composure cracked, just slightly. The truth spreads. One by one, stories emerged. Hidden pits, beaten horses, forced fights, threats, debt bondage. Crow's influence had been strong, but fear weakens when someone speaks first. Clara had spoken, and others followed. Caleb watched her with something deeper than admiration. Respect. The judge leaned back, face grave. Mr. Crow, do you deny these claims? Crow stood slowly. Frontier business is not gentle. That is not an answer. Crow's eyes flicked toward Clara. You think taming one horse makes you powerful? Clara held his gaze. No, it made me free. The room went silent. The judge's gavel struck. Silas Crow, you are remanded into custody pending full territorial investigation. Gasps. Shouts. Crow stepped forward before deputies grabbed him. You think chains hold men like me? He hissed. Clara didn't step back this time. They hold enough. He was led away, and for the first time since she had fled Dakota. Clara breathed without looking over her shoulder. The return to Red Hollow. The ride home felt different. Lighter. The prairie stretched wide, no longer a threat. Devil ran beside them freely, mane flying in the wind. When they reached the ranch, the burned barn stood as a reminder. But not of defeat, of survival. Caleb turned to Clara in the yard. It won't be easy rebuilding. She smiled softly. It wasn't easy surviving either. He stepped closer. You could leave now. She looked around at the land. At the sky. At Devil grazing peacefully. I don't want to. He hesitated. Then stay. She met his eyes. Not as someone you saved. No, not as someone you protect. He shook his head. As someone who chooses to stand here. Caleb's voice was steady. Then stay as my equal. The wind moved gently across the prairie. Devil lifted his head and walked toward them. He lowered it between them like he had before. A silent witness, a living reminder. Caleb extended his hand, not to claim, to invite. Clara placed hers in his. Not owned, not rescued, chosen. 1 year later, the barn stood rebuilt, stronger than before. More horses filled the pasture. Not wild from fear, but trained with patience. Men from nearby towns brought troubled animals to the Mercer Ranch now. Not for breaking, for healing. Clara walked the fence line at sunrise. Devil trotted beside her, no longer called Devil by anyone. The town children called him Midnight. Caleb joined her at the gate. Crow's trial concluded, he said. She looked up. Prison, yes. For a long time, the wind carried the words across open land. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Not in relief, in closure. You changed more than a horse, Caleb said quietly. She smiled faintly. No, she looked at Midnight. He changed me first. The stallion pressed his head gently against her shoulder. The same way he had that first morning in the smoke-filled barn. Only now, there was no fire, no gunshots, no shadows riding the ridge. Just open sky, and two people who learned that strength is not loud. It listens, it waits, and when the moment comes, it chooses freedom. Make sure to like and subscribe for more story backquotes like this.